In this project, you will be sewing a pet blanket, which can be used by your own pet or donated to your local animal shelter. Your finished blanket will measure 18 inches by 24 inches, which is the size my local shelter requests for cat blanket donations. In addition to a threaded sewing machine and standard sewing tools, you will need 3/4 of a yard of cotton flannel fabric. The optional pet blanket project instruction sheet and pattern can be purchased and downloaded online from the Calico Jam shop. For a link to the shop, please see the video description. Skills used in this project include ironing, sewing accurate seam allowances, making pivot turns, and backstitching. If you are new to sewing or need a refresher on any of these skills, begin with my Sewing Basics and Machine Sewing for Beginners videos. I am using cotton woven flannel fabric, but you can use any other similar fabric that is medium weight and does not stretch. I do not recommend using fleece fabric if you are new to sewing. The fleece tends to stretch and move around as you sew, making it difficult for beginners. Be sure to wash and dry your fabric before beginning the project, as the fabric can shrink during this process. Iron your fabric to remove any wrinkles. Print and assemble your pattern piece. Arrange the 6 printed pages in order in 2 rows, with pages 1 through 3 in the top row and pages 4 through 6 in the bottom row. Assemble the top row by aligning and taping side A to line A. Align and tape side B to line B. Repeat the process for the bottom row with sides C and D. Now attach the bottom row onto the top row by aligning and taping side E to line E. Your pet blanket pattern is now complete and should be a rectangle measuring 19 inches by 25 inches. The grain line arrow on the pattern piece should be aligned with the lengthwise grain of the fabric. This refers to the direction of the woven threads that are parallel to the selvage or factory finished edge. The fabric is most stable in this direction and does not stretch. The crosswise grain is also quite stable, but the bias or diagonal grain stretches. To help your pet blanket retain its shape, be sure to properly line up the grain line arrow. I am going to fold my fabric so I can cut out both rectangles at one time. Lay the pattern on your fabric and use a tape measure to check that each end of the grain line arrow is the same distance from the selvage edge. Pin through the pattern piece and both layers of fabric to hold the pattern in place. Evenly place pins near the edge of the pattern piece. Use your sewing shears to cut around the pattern piece through both layers of fabric and then remove the pins. Look at both sides of your fabric rectangles and determine which side is the front of the fabric. This is referred to as the right side of your fabric. Place the 2 rectangles of fabric on top of each other with the right sides together. Carefully line up the edges of the fabric rectangles. To keep the fabric aligned while sewing, pin the 2 layers together where we will be sewing. The pins should be pointing toward the center of the rectangle, with the heads of the pins just off the edge of the fabric. This makes it easier to remove them while at the sewing machine. I like to mark my 5-inch opening with double pins at each end as a reminder to not sew the opening shut. We will be sewing a seam with a 1/2-inch seam allowance around the sides of the rectangle, leaving a 5-inch opening on one side as indicated on the pattern piece, which will allow us to turn the pet blanket right side out after sewing. We will begin stitching here at the end of the opening with a back stitch, then sew forward until you approach the first corner. Make a pivot turn at the corner, sew along the next edge, make another pivot turn, sew until the next corner, make another pivot turn, sew along this edge, make the last pivot turn, then continue sewing until you reach the opening, which is marked with double pins. Backstitch again here to secure the threads, leaving the 5-inch opening unsewn. Before sewing, make sure the thread tails on your machine are in their proper position and give them a gentle pull to make sure they pull freely with just a little bit of tension. If they are stuck or don't pull smoothly, try rethreading your machine. Locate the line on your throat plate that is a 1/2 inch away from the needle. I have painter's tape marking my 1/2 inch line so it's easier to see. Place your fabric under the presser foot at the double set of pins marking the end of the 5-inch opening, and line up the right-hand edge of the fabric with the 1/2 inch mark on the throat plate of your machine. Turn the hand wheel toward you to put the needle into the fabric. Lower your presser foot, engage your reverse lever, and sew backward 3 or 4 stitches. Now sew slowly forward, keeping the right edge of the fabric lined up with the 1/2 inch mark on your sewing machine. As you approach the first corner, take your foot off of the foot pedal and switch to using the hand wheel, being sure to only turn it toward you. When you are ready to make the pivot turn, put the needle down into the fabric, lift the presser foot, and rotate the fabric. Lower the presser foot and continue on to the next corner, carefully watching the edge of the fabric to keep it lined up with the 1/2 inch mark. Make another pivot turn at this corner. Continue sewing until you reach the next corner. Make a pivot turn. Sew along the next edge, then make the last pivot turn. Sew until you arrive at the double set of pins, marking the beginning of the 5-inch opening. Then backstitch 3 or 4 stitches to secure your stitching. Turn the hand wheel toward you until the thread take-up lever is at the top. Lift the presser foot and pull your fabric out to the left. Trim your threads, being sure to leave a 4 to 5-inch tail attached to the machine, and trim the extra threads close to your project. Press your project. Using sewing shears, cut the corners of fabric off at an angle, leaving a minimum of 1/8 of an inch between your stitching line and the cut edge of your fabric. This removes some bulk of the fabric, which helps the corners to lay flat when the pet blanket is turned right side out. Turn the pet blanket right side out through the 5-inch opening, taking care to push the seams out to the edges and the corners out to points. pressing as you go. Fold the raw edges of the 5-inch opening of the pet blanket 1/2 inch down to the inside. Use a seam gauge or ruler to measure and press with an iron as you go. Carefully line up and pin together the folded opening through all layers, placing the pins parallel to the edge with the heads to the right. This makes it easier to remove them while you are sewing. Your pet blanket should now measure 18 inches by 24 inches. Next, we will sew a top stitch, 1/4 inch away from the edge, all around the pet blanket. Find the 1/4 inch line on the throat plate of your machine. The right edge of my presser foot is 1/4 inch away from the needle, so I will keep the fabric edge lined up with the edge of my presser foot to sew at 1/4 inch. Place your pet blanket under the presser foot at the beginning of your pinned opening. Line up your pet blanket appropriately to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Turn the hand wheel toward you to put the needle down into your fabric. Lower your presser foot and begin with a back stitch to secure your stitching. Sew forward across the pinned opening, stopping to remove the pins as you go. Sew along each edge, making proper pivot turns at every corner. Continue sewing until you are back where you began. Backstitch again here. Lift the presser foot and pull your fabric out to the left. Trim your threads and press. Give your blanket to your own pet or donate it to your local animal shelter.